On December 9th, after a phone call with co-conspirator 5, one of the campaign's agents wrote in an email that co-conspirator 5's plan for the electors to send a fake electoral vote to Pence, so they were even trying to trick Pence, was kind of wild and creative. 2.5 hours later, he replied to his own email and as cover wrote, the alternative votes is probably a better term than fake votes, and that he agreed with the suggestion to keep... These are in emails, you guys! They wrote emails saying that they're gonna do this! Like... What the fuck is wrong with these? The arrogance, the hubris. Like, they wrote these emails that says it's probably better if we used the word alternative votes instead of fake votes, and that he agreed with the suggestion to keep the plan under wraps until Congress counts the votes on January 6th. In each of the targeted states, Mr. Orange and his conspirators successfully organized enough elector nominees and substitutes to gather on December 14th, cast fraudulent electoral votes on his behalf and send them to DC for the certification. In fact, the RNC chairwoman relayed to Mr. Orange on the evening on December 14th that that was the case. I don't know why it took this long. It's ridiculous. At the same time that Mr. Orange's elector nominees in the targeted states were preparing to gather and cast fraudulent votes, his co-conspirators were planning to use them to overturn the election results on January 6th. On December 13th, co-conspirator 5 sent another memorandum to co-conspirator 1 that envisioned a scenario in which the vice president would use the fraudulent slates to claim that there were dueling slates of electors from the targeted states and negotiate a solution for Mr. Orange to seize power. They just sent emails. They just sent emails about it. Like, and on December 16th, co-conspirator 5 traveled to Washington with a group of private attorneys who had done work for Mr. Orange's campaign in Wisconsin for a meet and greet with Mr. Orange in the Oval Office. As the group left, co-conspirator 5 had a direct private conversation with Orange. Days later, on December 19th, Mr. Orange publicly posted a tweet demonstrating his own focus on the certification proceeding and directing his supporters to gather in DC. So now we're going into the misuse of power and then eventually the thing. Statistically impossible. Okay. He posted that it was impossible to lose, blah, blah, blah. There will be... Oh, he posted at 1:42 a.m., Orange posted a copy of a report falsely alleging outcome determinative election fraud and wrote, statistically impossible to have lost the 2020 contest. Big protest in DC on January 6th. Be there. Will be wild. That it talks about pressuring states officials to discount legitimate votes, and after it failed and the elector plan unfolded, Mr. Orange also tried another tactic. He attempted to wield federal power to perpetuate his fraud claims and retain office. Mr. Orange was frustrated with the Justice Department because its criminal investigations had identified no evidence of substantial fraud, and the Attorney General had publicly acknowledged this fact in an interview on December 1st by saying, quote, to date, we have not seen fraud on a scale that could have affected a different outcome. As a result, Mr. Orange considered appointing co-conspirator 4, the DOJ attorney who worked on civil matters, to be the acting attorney general, because he described below that co-conspirator 4 was willing to use the Justice Department to spread Orange's lies and pressure targeted states to overturn. Co-conspirator 4 is fucked, you guys. Whoever co-conspirator 4 is, he's got explaining to do. He's in trouble. Whoever that is, he or she. Throughout the post-election period, Justice Department officials reviewed Mr. Orange's claims of election fraud, found no support for any of them, and informed him of such. So the Department of Justice was working with this, on this at the time, and they were telling him, you don't have, this isn't real. There's no fraud. We're investigating it. It's not happening. It didn't happen. And he just keeps going. This is from 2020. This is from what he did in 2020. This is was published this morning. This is the Smith finding. So everything that he's saying, on each page that I'm reading, there's about this much citations that show what interviews, what emails, and where he got all of this information. It's all referenced. It's not just him like, we think this happened. Like, this is the evidence that I'm reading. And it says where it's coming from. I agree with you, Warrior. I agree with you because that has to be the case. Okay, throughout the post-election period, they reviewed Mr. Orange's claims of election fraud, found no support for any of them, and informed him of such. In one such discussion, when the acting attorney general advised Mr. Orange that the Justice Department could not just snap its fingers and change the election outcome, Mr. Orange told the attorney general and the acting deputy attorney general that they should just say that the election was corrupt and leave the rest to me and the Republican congressman. In the same call, alluding to replacing Justice Department leadership if they did not do as he directed. He said he would replace them if they didn't do what he said. He threatened their jobs. He's just calling people to do it! Do it! Like, what a fucking nut job. Orange also said, people tell me Co-Conspirator 4 is great. I should put him in instead of you. Mr. Orange knew about Co-Conspirator 4 because he'd been introduced to him by a member of Congress and had been secretly engaging with Co-Conspirator 4, who was communicating with Mr. Orange in conversation of policies designed to protect the independence of the Justice Department. So we need to find out who Co-Conspirator 4 is. It's someone who was in the Department of Justice. He was someone, I said earlier who it was. I'll have to, what his position was. I'll have to go back in a minute. And then on December 28th, in his secret communications with Mr. Orange, Co-Conspirator 4 I gotta find out who it was. Hold on a second. I can't not know who Co-Conspirator 4 was. It's widely believed to be John Eastman, a lawyer who played a significant role in advising Orange and his legal team on the strategy to contest the elections. John Eastman is a law professor and former dean of the Chapman University School of Law. He was involved in promoting the false claims So they believe it's a man named John Eastman. I don't know him. He's an attorney. Although he was not formally named in every part of the indictment, sources and legal experts have suggested that Co-Conspirator 4 is indeed John Eastman based on the activities. So that's allegedly. I don't know that that's him. That's what I'm reading online. Okay, so Co-Conspirator 4 is a real turkey. Co-Conspirator 4 proposed to send it to the governor, speaker, and president pro temp of each relevant state to indicate that in light of time, urgency, and sworn evidence of election irregularities presented to courts and to the legislative committees, the legislators thereof should each assemble and make a decision about elector appointment in light of their deliberations. Within about an hour of receiving the draft letter, the acting deputy attorney general pointedly rejected his proposal, writing, "I know of nothing that would support the statement. We have identified significant concerns that may have impacted the outcome of the election in multiple states." So they thought that they could just call the attorney general and the acting deputy attorney general and just tell them, there's been fraud. And that they would say, oh, okay. He also observed that the Justice Department had no role in the state's administration of their own elections, writing, "I cannot imagine a scenario in which the department would recommend that a state assemble its legislature to determine whether already certified election results should somehow be overridden by legislative action." Nonetheless, Mr. Orange continued to circumvent Justice Department leadership and engage directly with Co-Conspirator 4. With Mr. Orange's intervention, Co-Conspirator 4 obtained a highly classified briefing on foreign interference. Wait, what? Co-Conspirator 4 obtained a highly classified briefing on foreign interference in 2020 with the help of Mr. Orange, a briefing that yielded nothing to support the conspirators' allegations as demonstrated by contemporaneous electronic messages between Co-Conspirator 4 and the same member of Congress who had introduced Co-Conspirator 4 to Orange. Man. Oh my God. They have you guys, we already knew, right? But like, these people had absolutely no respect or regard at all for the law, for our country, for the people, for our rights, for the Constitution. Like, they're like, fuck all of that. We're just going to do what we want. Like, they really just tried to manhandle this country. So think about that. If that's what they did and they knew this, the DOJ has known this. Everybody in our government has known this is happening, right? This is just the public publishing. Why would it have been so easy this year? Tell me that they didn't let that. Come on. You know what I'm saying? How could this have just gone through so easy? They would have been I'm not adding I'm just going to keep reading. With Trump's yet the following day, Mr. Orange attempted to install co-conspirator 4 as the acting attorney general. Well, that tells us who it was. Who did he try to install as attorney general on January 3rd, 2020? On January 3rd, after he offered the position to co-conspirator 4 and the co-conspirator informed Justice Department senior leadership that he was accepting it, Mr. Orange, the co-conspirator 4, and senior officials from the DOJ and White House counsel's office gathered for a hastily scheduled meeting in the Oval. Mr. Orange made clear that he wanted to appoint co-conspirator 4 because co-conspirator 4 would cause the DOJ to send to this targeted states the false letter that the acting attorney general and acting deputy attorney general had rejected. So he had his co-conspirator attorney tried to appoint him as attorney general so that he could then make the DOJ send the letter saying these are the electorals. He won. He just tried to make them just say it. Mr. Orange ultimately did not do so only because he was informed that if he did, mass resignations within the DOJ and the White House would result. So people said, we're not doing this. We'll quit and you'll be on your own. So he didn't do it. Near the end of the meeting, oh my God, all those people are witnesses. This is huge. Okay. In the weeks before certification, Mr. Orange began pressuring Mr. Pence to cooperate, both directly and by mobilizing Mr. Orange's supporters. In repeated conversations day after day, oh God, Mr. Orange pressed Mr. Pence to use his ministerial position as president of Senate to change the election outcome, often by citing false claims of election fraud as justification. He even falsely told Pence that the Justice Department was finding major infractions. Now that's a quote. So these are things that have been documented. These are things that he said. Okay, so then it says, when Mr. Pence repeatedly refused to act as Mr. Orange wanted, Mr. Orange told him that hundreds of thousands of people would hate his guts and think he was stupid. Like a child. Everyone's going to hate you. And that Mr. Pence was too honest. Surrounding these communications, Mr. Orange frequently took to Twitter to exhort supporters to travel to Washington for January. Thank you for sharing, Tulsa. Read that again. Mr. Orange told Pence that hundreds of thousands of people would hate his guts and think he was stupid, and that Mr. Pence was too honest. Surrounding these communications, Mr. Orange frequently took to Twitter to exhort supporters to travel to Washington, D.C. on January 6th, which is when he tweeted on January 1st. Such as when he tweeted on January 1st, the big protest rally in Washington, D.C. will take place at 11 a.m. on January 6th. Location details to follow. Stop the steal. On January 4th, 2 days before the certification proceeding, Mr. Orange arranged for Pence to meet with co-conspirator 2 in the Oval Office in hopes that co-conspirator 2 could convince Pence to accede. Now, this is cited. This has a citation. Yes, I am Haiku. This is a citation that he arranged for Pence to meet with co-conspirator 2, which means that this was documented by one of them told the DOJ this is what he did. Like, this is what he told me. During the meeting, co-conspirator 2 outlined 2 ways that he claimed Mr. Pence would affect the election outcome. Using his role in the certification, he could reject the legitimate electors outright, denying Mr. Biden as electoral majority, and likely sending the selection of the president to the House of Representatives, where fellow Republicans controlled the majority of state delegations, or he could send the elector slates to targeted states' legislators for them to choose with electoral votes which electoral votes should be counted. So he was giving Pence 2 options to do this. He could, Jesus Christ, he could just reject them outright, or he could send them back to the electors, and then have the electors provide new votes that were fake that he could then submit. In response to Mr. Pence's questioning, co-conspirator 2 admitted that both proposals violated the ECA and were untested. When Mr. Pence turned to Mr. Orange and pointed out that even Mr. Orange's lawyer, co-conspirator 2, did not think Pence had the authority to return electoral votes to the states, Mr. Orange responded that he liked the other thing better, just do it, which Mr. Pence understood to mean Mr. Pence simply rejecting the electoral votes outright. So he just wanted him to we knew that. He just wanted him to just say no. No. Oh, good call, Kim. Well, one of them is from the DOJ, and the rest of them are attorneys, so I'm not sure. That night, Mr. Orange used a speech in Dalton, Georgia, to focus the crowd on the idea that Mr. Pence could change the results, saying, quote, "I hope Mike Pence comes through for us. I have to tell you, I hope that we read this. I hope that our great vice president comes through for us. Of course, if he doesn't come through, I won't like him quite as much." The next day, on January 5th, when Mr. Orange again failed to make headway with Mr. Pence in a private conversation, which means that Mr. Pence told the DOJ this, Mr. Orange warned that he would have to publicly criticize Mr. Pence. So he's threatening him. Mr. Orange then issued a false statement in the New York Times, claiming the vice president and I are in total agreement that the vice president has the power to act. Yeah, he is a toddler. It's crazy. Okay, letter E. Mr. Orange's supporters attacked the Capitol. I'm not going to say I'm not going to read this. Do you guys want me to read the whole thing about the attack? Okay, he was scheduled to speak at the Ellipse to a crowd of supporters he had summoned. He tweeted his tweet about Pence. If he comes through for us, we will win the presidency. Just before he left the White House, he gave a speech that we all heard and saw. He phoned Mr. Pence one last time. He said that he planned to issue a public statement making it clear that he lacked the authority to do what he wanted, and Orange was angry at him. He then directed staffers to reinsert into his planned speech some language that had drafted earlier targeting Mr. Pence. During his speech, he made one more attempt to retain power. He repeated many of the same lies he'd been telling for months. The lie regarding Mr. Pence was particularly deceptive because Mr. Trump knew what his supporters in the crowd did not, that Mr. Pence had just told him in no uncertain terms that he would not do what he was demanding. So that shows intent to hurt Pence. That shows intent. He knew, and he told his supporters, that he was on his side and that he would be basically backstabbing them if he didn't do it. Mr. Orange told a crowd of his supporters that he had remarked to advisors the night before was angry, so he knew that they were angry and riled out, that the election had been stolen and that the country would no longer exist if it wasn't stopped. It's important to point out here while I'm reading this that the Constitution, the 14th Amendment, doesn't say that you have to be convicted of insurrection. It says you have to be a part of it. You just have to be knowingly a part of it. I'm just saying. Although Mr. Orange at one point told his supporters to peacefully and patriotically make their voices heard, he used the word fight more than 10 times in the speech before concluding by directing his supporters to march to the Capitol to give allied members of Congress, quote, the kind of pride and boldness they need to take back our country. To take our country, you guys. This might not be something that could have been prosecuted Okay? But this is participating in an insurrection. Something has to come from this. He also told the angry crowd that if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. I remember that. He gave them false hope. He made them believe that Pence was going to help him and that he had to, and that if he didn't, he would be turning his back on the Constitution. Thousands of supporters marched to the Capitol. Outside the building, okay, I'm not going to read what happened on January 6th. We all saw it. We all know what happened. Let me see if there's anything here. There's 4 pictures here that show. Oh my God. There's 4 pictures just showing. There's the picture of them beating police officers with a stick, with the flag, with the American flag. There's 2 pages here of citations showing where they got this evidence from. Just actually, there's a lot. There's 2 pages of a lot of pictures. And then it says, after his speech, Mr. Orange returned to the White House. There he watched. We know that he watched it. He was proud of his work. When the angry crowd advanced, they rushed the dining room. Okay, it just outlines the January 6th. I'm gonna skim through this. We know there's nothing in here that I can see that's new. When an advisor at the White House learned that Secret Service was forced to evacuate Mr. Pence, Mr. Orange is documented as saying, "So what?" That's important.